And now we'll hear from Dr. Stella Volpe, Department of Nutrition Sciences Chair at Drexel University.
Thank you. Thank you all so much for having me here. It is, thanks, always tough act to follow. Don't be sorry. No worries, really. Thank you. Oh my gosh, you're like so serious. Oh, do me a favor, stand up and stretch for just a second. You have to do that. Hard to sit for this long. Oh gosh, I should know I'm in front of military. You listen so quickly. It's not typical for college students in my, at Drexel. So, you doing okay today? Good. I feel like I just have to share something with you up front. My husband, my birthday was last week. I turned 28 for the second time. My husband took me to see Earth, Wind, and Fire at Music Fest in Bethlehem. Oh, and I don't know, some of you are too young to even know who they are, but I've been jamming on the way here this morning. So I feel like I was like singing out loud. I think I sound as good as they do. I do, in my mind. All right, do you want to have a seat? But anytime you need to stand, just stand during my talk. I won't be offended at all. Anyway, I'm going to start with this and end with this. So the quote of one of their songs, Way of the World, which is one of my favorite songs, and when they sang it, it brought me right back to high school. And stay young at heart and never grow old, right? That's one of the lines, if you can remember that. So always stay young at heart. So I'm going to start with that, and we'll end with that. So again, I'm honored to be here. To speak at Resiliency Day for me is like I get choked up. To speak in front of you, I get choked up. When I speak in the spring to the class, because I'm so honored to be in front of you who serve our country. So hear me, because I'm a mess. I'm an Italian mess, and my parents were Italian immigrants, and my dad served in Korea. So I just want to thank you so much for your service, and I mean that sincerely. Okay. You can tell because I'm already choked up, but I will stop. So here we go. Today I'm going to walk you through some of this stuff. I'm going to hopefully teach you one or two things. I'll try to stay within my time limit as much as I can so you can ask me questions. But let's start. Some of it you might know and already, but I'll go through some of it a little more quickly than others. And just so you know, this is not like some fancy little wristband, ankle band. I work out a lot, and one of the things I've done for a long time is CrossFit, and I got some rope burns because I kind of slide down the rope and I shouldn't. So I was told I should cover it. I was playing in a field hockey tournament this weekend, and my trainer's like, you need to cover it. I said, but my dogs have been licking it. That should be good, right? And which is absolutely true. Anyway, so here we go. Thank you for laughing at my jokes, because that makes me so happy. All right, here we go. Doesn't take much for me. So what helps you with physical, and I'm going to talk about cognitive performance too, because all of us need both, and consume adequate energy, promote optimal recovery from training, maintain your hydration status, and also to maintain your appropriate body composition. I'll focus on those first three mostly, and I know that, folks in the sustainability leadership, Dawn was talking about all they do for you. Please take advantage of that. That is such an amazing program that they have for you that you can learn so much about yourself. So, and I'm honored that I've been asked, and thank you again for having me. So here we talk about, proteins and carbohydrates and fats, and these all really need to be eaten all the time as far as together. We don't have to stay away from one food or another unless there's a contraindication or you're allergic. But combining these foods is really important for our health. Very basic information. And thank you for your attention. I'm kidding. Okay, so here we go with carbohydrates is one that we hear about and almost think that it's bad for us. And it's not. Right? Carbohydrates we need to fuel our energy with them, and we need between anywhere from 45 to 65% of your total calories a day. People with diabetes likely need less, and some people go lower for certain reasons, and maybe it helps maintain their blood sugar. But in essence, we need about that much. You don't want to go down to 10 grams per day, etc. And so depending on what you're exercising, and all of you do exercise, I know is part of what you need to do, is that it depends on, for me, honestly, I wish I loved water, plain water. And I like fizzy water as if I'm so sophisticated, right? But I do like my San Pellegrino. But when I exercise, I do better when I have a hydration drink. So I use something like a Clean Athlete, which is just a drink that I know that has no food coloring in it. I don't get a kickback. It's just that it's NSF certified, meaning that I know that there's no other stuff in it. Another company has certified that it's pure. But you don't really need anything but water if you're going less than 45 minutes. And then if you go from 45 to 75 minutes, you can just still contain water, but honestly, there's some research that shows if you rinse your mouth with something like, I'll just say Gatorade or something like that, you can actually get some benefits just from an oral mouth rinse, because some people don't like to actually drink sports drinks when they exercise. They feel like it makes their mouth kind of yucky. So, and that's a scientific term, yucky. So just so you know. So there we go for that. And if you go a little bit higher, 1 to 2.5 hours or 2.5 hours greater, then having something like a carbohydrate drink is really important. Or having something like energy gels or energy chews with water is also important. Okay, so having those more than when you go an hour or so is helpful for you. What it does, before I go to the next thing, is what it does is it helps to spare your muscle glycogen. And that's something that we always say in physiology and sports nutrition is you want to maintain the glycogen and the stored glucose that's in your muscle so that you can save it for later. And so the longer you go, the more likely you need these sports drinks or chews or gels, and then that will spare it. Your body's going to use the blood glucose first before it uses that's in your muscle. Okay, does that make sense? Just say yes even if it doesn't. I'm kidding, you don't have to. So let's talk a little bit about fat. And I always say this, people who have heard my talks before get so bored, but as an Italian, I always feel like my blood is partially green from olive oil. And those of you who are Mediterranean, and you know that olive oil is sort of a big part of what we use as fats. And what I will tell you is that is the #1 fat to use, to cook with, to put on your salads, etc. But there's no real recommendation for things like saturated fats, but there is recommendations for things from total calories. So anywhere from 25 to 35% of your total calories can come from fat. And if that fat is good fat, mostly monounsaturated and polyunsaturated fats like olive oil, like nuts, avocados, you can go higher. You can go on that higher end. As a matter of fact, research has shown that people with diabetes, when they switch to better fats, even if they didn't decrease carbohydrate intake or change the percent of fat from their diets, they maintain their blood glucose levels pretty well just by improving the type of fat they consume. And that is really easy to do. It really is much easier. Even if you're a person who loves to go to fast foods, like try to just change what you go and get, as opposed to maybe always getting fries, maybe getting a grilled chicken sandwich with a salad as opposed to a hamburger with French fries, right? Something like that. Very easy to make. Small changes every day is very easy. And you're like, yeah, Stella, right. But really it can be, and that's all we need to do, right? We can't be, if you're eating a certain way, you can't be expected to change that tomorrow. So small changes every day, and kind of going with what Rick said, like we just really have to, not go nuts over things and just sort of really just say, okay, what am I doing today for myself to make myself better? We really didn't practice this, but anyway, this is my chance, though, to talk about the ketogenic diet. So I know a lot of people are like the ketogenic diet. They think it really helps them. And so where does it come from? And I was all excited about this because in all my years of knowing about ketogenic diet, I actually didn't know this derivative, that the word ketone comes from the German word Aceton, and I hope anybody who's German in here, I hope I didn't really ruin that, for acetone. And acetone is a ketone, right, that we make. That's one of the ketones, and that's why we call it, that's where they came with the word. So ketone bodies, what are they? What happens is this. If you're not eating enough carbohydrates, right, your body's going to say, I need to make more energy. And so I can go through some pathways with you, but what actually happens is there's a little bit of a backup. There's a little backup of something called acetyl-CoA that comes out of glycolysis when it becomes aerobic. And that just is to make me sound like I know what I'm talking about. So then what happens is this acetyl-CoA has to go somewhere. It's like you're in a traffic jam, right, and you're trying to get off the highway. You've got to go somewhere. And so what happens is that goes to make some ketone bodies. And those ketone bodies, our human bodies are so amazing, right? They're so amazing because they're very resilient. How do you like that? Resiliency Day. Oh, come on, give that one to me. I didn't even plan that. So anyway, so we've got this resilient body who says, okay, we need to make ketone bodies because we know, our bodies say, I can give you energy from ketone bodies. Not the best way to give you energy, but I can do it. And that's exactly what happens. So that's, again, why people want to go on these diets, because they say, okay, if I use ketone bodies, I'm going to use more fat. So there's a study done published 2 years ago by Urbane et al., where they wanted to evaluate whether a ketogenic diet affected physical performance. And again, ketogenic diet is very low, but adequate in protein. And let me just stop again to say, way back when it was developed, 1923 or so, is when the ketogenic diet was developed. It was developed for individuals with epilepsy, and it's actually still used today in children in particular who have epilepsy. It helps to decrease their seizures. But that diet developed in 1923, the real ketogenic diet is 90% saturated fat. So when someone tells me that they're on a ketogenic diet today, I'm pretty certain they're not on 90% fat and 10% of protein and carbohydrates, right? It's definitely not that high. So anyway, so what they did was they said, okay, we're gonna not limit the energy of these athletes, but we want to see if this affects their performance. And so they put these folks on a 6-week ketogenic diet, and they had detailed instructions. They met with dietitians. They wanted to make sure they adhered to the diet by checking their urinary ketones. If your urinary ketones are like a 4+ is what they say in the urine, then you're high in your ketone bodies. And the individuals actually did very well. So there are 42 of them, about 37 years of age, with a pretty average BMI. And they did get pretty good detection. So in this little blue box here to your left, that 97% of them were 97% of the time they showed that they were adherent to the diet. And the mean energy intake didn't change from their habitual diet, which was what they wanted them to do, is to keep that calorie intake. And you could see the composition of their diet was about 70% fat. And what did they find? They found that they all did have weight loss. But they also see what happened. Peak oxygen consumption, a measure of your aerobic fitness. Peak power, a measure of sort of that anaerobic capacity. And total cholesterol and LDL, they all basically did not improve. So they had a decreased body weight, but a decrease in their aerobic fitness, their power fitness, and then they had an increase in HDL and, LDL and total cholesterol. So those weren't good. But they did find an improvement in hand grip strength. Yeah. Thank you. I was trying to put some positive spin on that, but you guys are so good. So, I mean, all in all, they showed a negative effect. And yet there are athletes who tell me they really like the ketogenic diet and they feel like they do well in it. I worry over the long term what's going to happen though, right? Because remember, they keep using now, they might be starting to break down muscle because our body breaks down muscle before it will break down fat. My students always say that to me. I'm like, what? You're not gonna break down those stores of fat quickly. That's not what happens even when you start to diet, right? That's not gonna happen, unfortunately, because why? Our bodies are resilient. I'm gonna keep using that to beat it to death. But our bodies wanna hold on to it to protect us, especially if you go in true starvation, right? It makes sense. So, another more recent study wanted to evaluate, does ketogenic diets affect high-intensity interval training, right? So we know that people who have high-intensity interval training, we go into acidosis, right? You go hard, you're gonna have higher amounts of lactate in your blood. That means that you're gonna have more acidic blood for a short period of time. And so what they did was they had 16 women and men, and they randomized them, but they did a crossover design. So not a huge number of people, but everybody was their own control, right? So whoever did one thing then ended up doing the other. But it was random in which they did, whether they had the ketogenic diet or a regular diet. And you could see they had either a ketogenic or high carbohydrate, and they were matched for total calories, but except for carbohydrate. They found that those individuals on the ketogenic diet did not do well. They had a lower peak power output, and they had a lower mean power. So the short-term ketogenic diet does not seem to appear to help us with either aerobic power or anaerobic power. But I thought I'd throw one more at you, and I thought this was so interesting. And this was another study just published this year. And what they found was eating a ketogenic diet actually negatively impairs your oral microbiota. And so we all hear about the microbiota and the microbiome, right? That's the good bacteria that is in our bodies that can actually it's been connected with so many things. And I'm not going to pretend like I'm an expert on the microbiota and microbiome. As a matter of fact, I always have to look up because there is a slight difference between the two of them, even though we use them interchangeably, microbiota and microbiome. But they found that the bacteria in the mouth that was good decreased and the bad increased after a ketogenic diet. So just be aware of that as well, that that's something else that perhaps might be a negative effect of the ketogenic diet. Now, I gave you a couple of biased sides to the ketogenic diet. There is some research that shows that there is an improvement in physical activity. So those of you who might be on a ketogenic diet, like you're probably like, oh yes, Stella, great, only negative. I'm not that kind of scientist. I'm gonna share with you both, but I'm just sharing with you some of the things because as a research scientist, I still need more data to see if it really is helpful for people in the long run. And it appears right now it's not, but obviously people can adjust their diets, but I wouldn't go as low with carbohydrates if I were an athlete. So now we're going to talk a little bit about protein, and I know that a lot of times protein's a big deal for people too when they think about their diets. And so the way protein is given in the RDA is by weight, right? So we go 0.8 grams per kilogram of body weight, or about 0.4 grams per pound. And yet for athletes typically, people who are physically active like you all are, you probably need to go up around 1 to 1.2. Mind you, as people living in the United States, most of us have a higher than usual protein intake. So likely, none of us need to increase our protein too much. As an aside, over the age of 40, and none of us in here are. At least not in our minds, right? Because we're never, ever old, right? Stay young at heart. But we have something called sarcopenia happening, meaning that even if you exercise, sarcopenia means muscle mass loss. You get a little bit of muscle mass loss. But people who exercise and maintain physical activity don't get as much as the average person who doesn't exercise. Okay, so having said all that, just to share with you, now those again who have been in my talks before, I use this again and again because it is like my favorite study as far as protein is concerned. I'm not saying they used whey protein, and it's not because I'm pushing whey protein, it's because of the well-designed nature of this study. You could see how nerdy I am, right? I get excited about a well-designed study. So here we go. This was a study done in Canada by a colleague of mine named Stu Phillips, and so this is one of his colleagues, and they wanted to evaluate whether the timing of protein and the amount of protein at that timing affected myofibrillar protein synthesis. And MPS simply means it's the growth of your muscle, right? That's what we're looking for when we want muscle growth. And we don't always want huge muscles. We just want muscles to stay strong and so we can be fit. Right? So what they did was, they had all men, and they were young men, about 25 years of age, but they had 3 groups. And they were small groups, but you'll see in a way why it might have been hard for them to recruit even more people. So they had 8 per group, and the first group had received 8 grams of whey protein every 1.5 hours, 10 times throughout the day. I don't think I would do very well with that. I don't know if I'd be so adherent. The second group took 20 grams of protein every 3 hours, so 4 times throughout the day. And the fourth group took 40 grams of protein twice a day. All took 80 grams, right? But you could see split up differently. And let me ask you this. Why do you think they chose to use whey protein? Say that again? It's readily available. And why else they did it is because they could control it, right? If I were to ask you all to eat 4 turkey sandwiches, you might not be as adherent as to, okay, you're gonna need to make this drink 4 times a day or 10 times a day or twice a day, right? So another reason is it's readily available. Also, research has shown that whey protein does increase muscle mass. That doesn't mean you should have a gallon of whey protein every day, just saying that research has shown that it does pretty well. Here's the reason why I don't think they did very well with getting a lot of people, but it's amazing, and this is why I love the study. Look at my line below. They took biopsies at baseline 1, 4, 6, 7, and 12 hours post-exercise. Have any of you ever had a muscle biopsy before? You and me? Just the 3 of 4 of us? Okay, a few of us? All right. You know how much they hurt. And they take them out of your quadriceps femoris muscle, and even though it's about this much, I swear, those physicians in here, you have to use the biggest instruments ever, right? So, they're this big, I think, the instruments, but really it's about this big, and they numb it and then punch it right there. And so you get a little piece of muscle. And I had our physician practice on me for the first 2 times before a study I did. Yeah, I was smart. But I always like to tell my participants I know what it feels like. So I like to get everything done that they're going to get done. Anyway, 6 times. So that was the beauty of this, because they weren't guessing how much muscle glycogen was in there. They were actually assessing it, or how much protein growth they had. All of the 3 of the different timings, all increased MPS. But the one that did the best was the 4x20. So what does that show us? That shows us that about 20 grams, maybe 30, as you're going to see in my next couple slides, is sort of that sweet spot. If you give yourself more than that in one sitting, you're not going to absorb as much, and you're not going to do your muscles as good. But if you give yourself about 20 grams, and you don't have to do it 4 times a day, even if you maybe want to try some whey protein and do it like one time after exercise, it might help you. I should probably take a little bit of whey protein day. I'm just so not a supplement person or extra. I like real food. But like, think about maybe having a good glass of milk without whey protein right after. Chocolate milk, we know, is a great recovery drink. And so something like that might really help you with your muscle recovery as well as keep maintaining your muscle mass post-exercise. There's one other thing I wanted to tell you, but I guess I'll move on. So why is it that it's whey protein? Because whey protein actually helps to increase an amino acid called leucine, and that might help to increase MPS, right? So that's sort of the domino effect, if you will. Are you good? Do you need to stand again? Yes? Why don't you stand really quickly? Because I can see, like, you've probably all been up at 4 a.m., right? Yeah, running. Yes. I know. Is this like your first week, yeah? First week? Not even a full week yet? Yes, not. Second day, and you have to hear me. Oh my gosh. And oh, this is great though. I'm so proud to see you all. All right, why don't you sit down now? But seriously, we'll wake you up again. I'll stand you up again. I can't sit for long. It's not good for us to sit. I did want to go back just to share. You saw up there that whey is better than soy and casein, although there's research now on casein for recovery. So that's kind of coming out as well. So this is showing you some data from NHANES, which is the National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey, which started in the 70s. And that's when the people, it's out of the US government, but that's when individuals go either around the country and actually take blood and get people's dietary intakes and take their DEXA scans for the bone density, or they also send surveys out. So this study has been going on for years and years and years, and they just wanted to see, they went and these data are available to any of us as researchers for free because we get to then evaluate them. As a matter of fact, one of my doctoral students, we just evaluated some of the data on magnesium intake and diabetes. But what this study was showing was how much protein should people consume and maybe maintain leg extensor strength and leg lean mass. And so they evaluated in that NHANES survey over 1,000 people from 50 to 85 years of age. And so they were looking at older adults, I guess we have to say. But they did this 24-hour recall. This multiple pass method just means that they do a really good job of asking you questions. They did a DEXA scan for bone density and lean body mass, and they did knee extensor strength tests. And they found that in this regards, these older individuals who consume maybe 30 to 45 grams at a sitting did better than those who didn't. So that's why I say 20, maybe to 30 grams, no more than that at a sitting if you're thinking about it, right? I don't want you to be thinking about food that much either. I'm very big on making sure we enjoy food and that we embrace it and celebrate it as much as I'm talking about sort of food as fuel. I also think we need to make sure we celebrate food and sit down and eat and also know we're eating and celebrate the people with whom we're eating. That's really, really important. All right, so I'm going to talk to you first about something called beet juice or beetroot juice. And I always like to ask this. I bet that's beet juice in that mug, isn't it? I know it. I could smell it. Actually, one time I had did I just get you in trouble? Oh, good. I'm so sorry. She has nothing. I didn't see anything. I was at an airplane once, and I get on, and this guy goes to me, "What do you have in there?" I said, "Oh, I have a beetroot latte," and I really did. Those of you who might fly out of Philly, La Colombe is a Philly thing. I think they have beetroot lattes a lot of places. And he goes, "Beet latte?" I said, "Oh, don't knock it until you try it." So it's really very good. There's a beet powder you can get, and you warm up your milk, and you put that beet powder in there. I'm weird, but I do like it. It's really good. Try it. So anyway, how many of you had beet juice? And I really won't say anything. Yes. And how many of you have raised your hand liked it? Oh, I'm so proud of you all. Thank you. Because I think it's delicious. If you haven't tried it yet, try it. But if you like beets, you might like beet juice. And maybe if you don't like the beet juice, put a little lemonade in it and you might like it then. Because some people think it tastes too much like dirt. I don't think so. But I know. I know. I don't get it, but I can understand it. They're like, oh, this really tastes dirt. So anyway, beet, we really call it beetroot juice. Like, we're the only country who calls it beet. Most countries call it beetroot, and it's formerly known as Beta vulgaris, which doesn't sound very good, but it gets a color. I know, that sounds vulgar, right? So botanin gives it its color, and that also has the high antioxidant properties. So you're going to get a little pattern from me now, because antioxidants, as we know, are really important, and they're in so many foods. I'm picking out just a few for you today, but why I picked these out is because they really have been shown to work and be healthy for you, and they're not a supplement. They're just a food. Not just, but they are a food. So you're like, okay, Stella, so what's up with this beet juice? Well, this is the pattern. Now, it's much deeper than this, and I actually just read something more recently about it that I was going to try to update you with, and I thought, no, you don't need to hear the details as much as knowing that when we eat foods like, well, first of all, nitric oxide, it is made in our bodies, right? So it's circular. Nitric oxide can also be made from dietary nitrate, things like beets, arugula, if you like that, watermelon, pomegranates, all these great things have a high amount of nitric oxide. Now, that nitrate the nitric oxide that converts to nitrate in our body, that's not like the nitrate from deli meats that's bad for us. This is the good nitrates that changes in our body. And the idea of that is if you can think of your blood vessels expanding, that's what it does. It causes our blood vessels to dilate, and then it causes greater blood flow in our blood vessels so that we're getting now more oxygen to our muscles, for example. Now you can see where this is leading. It likely helps us with endurance performance. But I'm going to also give you a spoiler that it really helps with blood pressure too. And sorry, I was reading a lot about this to update my slides. And just last night, I found another study that showed that there are fewer studies in women than men, although we're catching up. But there are definitely fewer studies on beet juice in women and men. And what the researchers were saying in this review article was that blood pressure changes in women are probably going to be less because we tend to have lower blood pressure than men. But I always tell people, if you have a blood pressure problem, if you have if you have a low blood pressure and you're going to take beet juice, be very aware of that. Because if you are one who gets very affected, it could drop it lower. So I have pretty low blood pressure. I do fine, but I always like to give that caveat because I think it's important to share with you all. Okay, so I already showed you this part. I talked to you about that. So I should go back. There's good evidence that it can help with both physical performance and long-distance performance and high-intensity and performance. But there's also another thing of that. Might it help individuals like cardiovascular fitness and disease? So let me just stop and make sure that I don't quickly overgo what I just said. Note that beetroot juice has been shown to help with endurance performance and also high-intensity performance. That has been shown again and again and again. And so therefore, again, including more beets in your diet or arugula or those kinds of foods can really be helpful to you. It also has been shown to help post-exercise with muscle recovery. So that's another good thing too. So just to be aware of that as well. And then I wanted to share with you, only because all of us are getting older, even though we have very young people in here with such a wide range of ages, but I wanted to evaluate a systematic review where they evaluated many studies to see how does beet juice, if at all, affects cardiovascular factors, because we see that if it increases vasodilation, then maybe it's going to help with cardiovascular markers. So what did they find? They found that from a physiological performance standpoint, it improved people who had chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. It improved those with peripheral artery disease, and it actually improved something called ejection fraction in people who have congestive heart failure. And for those of you who don't know, ejection fraction is sort of the force at which your heart's going to beat the blood out, and that's really important. So if it can improve that, that's a really good thing. They had mixed results in cognitive performance and cardiovascular health. Some of the studies showed improved blood pressure and improved blood flow, which was not a surprise. I thought all of them would show that, but not all did. One study showed improvement in cerebrovascular health. And I had to point to my head so that I knew that cerebrovascular is the brain. So anyway, here we go. This I literally just threw in last night because I know one of my brothers-in-law has Raynaud's, and I hope I say that right, Raynaud's syndrome and phenomenon, as do one of my good friends. And I thought, oh, I quickly sent them this article, although the results were funny. So why I'm still sharing with you, I don't know, because it really didn't show a difference, except they wanted to evaluate, again, is if this increased blood flow works, might it help people with Raynaud's phenomenon who have that feeling, loss of feeling in their hands, the coldness in their hands. And so what they did was they evaluated these several areas of markers, anti-inflammation, conductance, et cetera. And they had 23 people. It was double-blind, crossover again. Everybody was their own control. And they either gave them beet juice or a nitrate-depleted beet juice. Now, I'm going to just share something with you that I think is so cool. There's a guy in England who developed this nitrate-depleted beet juice, meaning that everything tastes the same. So if you are doing a study with beet juice, if I gave you both of them, you wouldn't know which one had the nitrate and which one didn't. And that's really great because that's like the best control you could ever have. Once again, my nerdy scientist comes out, but it's just really exciting. So Andy Jones is his name, and what they did was they gave them either or. But here's what's interesting. They really didn't find a difference between the nitrate-depleted beet juice or the regular beet juice. And that sort of disappointed me, because if the nitrate's gone, then really the reason of vasodilation is not going to be there. But I wanted to share this with you anyway, because any of you who might have this, you could give it a try. And again, it's having beet juice is very healthy for you. Again, just be aware if maybe you have lower blood pressure, to be aware of that. Okay, are you good with me so far? Are you good? Yes? Promise I'm not boring you? You're just being polite, right? Okay, well, I'm going to keep going, and hopefully I'll get you again. Try to finish up on time here. So tart cherries are another one. Has any of you ever had tart cherry juice? Not all my beet folks had the tart cherries, but some of you did. Did you all like it? No, yes? And some of you didn't. And so tart cherry is the same kind of thing, though, right? It's going to help with inflammation. It's going to help with recovery. And tart cherries, kind of like tomatoes, when they're processed, their antioxidant abilities actually come out more. So the idea is that becoming a juice is actually better than it's when it was a cherry. No offense to, we still can eat the Montmorency cherries, which is what they are. They have to be the Balaton or Montmorency cherries. Those are the tart cherries, not just regular old cherries that can help. And so it can help people with either osteoarthritis or, again, ultra endurance, bout of exercise. I'm going to share something with you that I don't have enough data on. This is so bad as a scientist, I shouldn't share anecdotal data, but I've not looked this up. Some people have told me that it helped with their gout. So I'm just going to share that with you, so you have to look up the science on that, because I don't like to just share anecdotal evidence with you. Tart cherry juice, might it help with markers of recovery with intermittent type of activity? Because a lot of us do those kinds of activities. And what they evaluated 16 professional, semi-professional male soccer players, and they did a double-blind controlled trial, 8 players per group, and they either got a placebo drink or they got the tart cherry juice. And they measured a lot of things, and I'm just going to quickly go through those and just tell you the end product. And the end product is that maximal voluntary isometric contraction, this counter movement jump for them to move back and forth, and their agility, they all recovered faster when they were on the tart cherry juice, those on the tart cherry juice or the tart cherry concentrate. They had lower ratings of delayed onset muscle soreness. Now, mind you, DOMS is what we call that for short. Some of you have heard of that. And it is a scale, but it's still, they used a validated scale. It's not as if they used something else, but that's subjective, but regardless. And then they also found something called interleukin-6, which is an inflammatory marker that went down. And I failed to mention, they used tart cherry concentrate, which you can buy. I have it in my fridge. You can just take a little tablespoon, or you can mix it with water. I also give some of that to my dogs, and it's helpful for their arthritis as well as they get older. So it's simple, really simple. And again, you could even put it in your smoothies or something like that. Or on top of your kibble, like I do with my dogs. Okay. Oh, sorry. See, just checking that you're still awake. That's all I want to do if you laugh at my stupid jokes. So again, these polyphenol-rich foods, that means they're high in antioxidants. They're going to help. They're going to help with recovery, and they're going to help you with osteoarthritis. Not everybody will be positively affected by it. I'm not up here as a salesperson trying to say, oh, yeah, buy this, buy that. I'll be selling them in the back for half price. Just kidding. Tart cherry juice can be very helpful, and some people really, really feel a difference. I'm going to tell you that I try to take tart cherry and turmeric, which I'll talk about. I try to do it daily, even though I'm really bad at taking anything extra. Like, I don't take pills of these things, right? But I will tell you, with all the athletics I do, that I really tend to recover so much faster. And so I'm not up here to talk about anything that I get a kickback on. I'm just sharing with you some simple things that might help you. Another one could be, again, is masters athletes who have osteoarthritis who exercise, and it might be helpful for inflammation post-exercise again. So think about that. And then I wanted to talk one more about cognitive function, but I forgot what I was going to say. Thank you. All right, so we know that hypertension, inflammation, and oxidative stress, all important for cognition, right? We know that the blood flow to the brain, all important for cognition. And we're trying so hard. I have a dean who does a lot of research with Alzheimer's and dementia, and we work really hard as thinking, what could we do further? And exercise and nutrition are kind of the newer areas with prevention of dementia and Alzheimer's. So really know that we do have good evidence in the beginnings that exercise and good nutrition can really help prevent and stave off dementia and Alzheimer's. So Chai et al. Examined the daily consumption of tart cherry juice, and did that affect people's cognition? And so they did this randomized controlled trial. They either gave them tart cherry or Kool-Aid. I think that if you talk to one another, you guys would know who was on tart cherry versus Kool-Aid, but they tried to make it similar. And they had 20 participants in one group and 17 in the other, and they were men and women, and they basically found that there were some improvements in cognition. And all these tests, I can't tell you I know exactly what they are with cognition, but they did find some improvement with cognition in these men and women. And so it's a start, right? It's a start with something simple. It's a start with something that we can maybe try this. And again, it's a food and not a supplement, and that's something that we can all put into our lives very easily. All right, so how are we? Again, are we good? Just to check in with you. Good? Thank you for being my guy. Always gives me a thumbs up. Right there, I can see you. So turmeric is another of my favorites. And how many of you take turmeric at all or know about it? Yeah? So sprinkling it on your foods is fine. If you do choose a supplement, I'm going to tell you, with any supplement, make sure that it's either USP certified or NSF. USP or NSF. And so those just mean that an outside company tests it for purity. NSF for sport is even a higher level because it wants to make sure that there are no anabolic steroids or anything in there. So turmeric is something that I have become a big fan of. And basically it's a member of the ginger family. It's this bright aromatic powder. I don't have to explain to you what it is, but it's the curcumin that's in the turmeric that is actually the most powerful part of turmeric. Okay, so that's the part. And if you looked at ginger versus turmeric next to each other, the root, it'd be hard for you to tell the difference, except turmeric's a little more orange, for those of you who have seen that. I don't grate my own turmeric. I probably should. I do buy it powdered already. And so a study was done in 2018, 12 weeks, 201 participants, and they were between 40 to 70 years of age, and more women than men were in this study. And they had 3 groups who took similar-looking capsules. They had a group who just took the curcuminoids, or the curcumins, and then they had a group who took something with boswellic acid, which is also shown to help with a little bit of inflammation, and then they had the placebo group. And what they did was they used this test called the WOMAC, which is a validated test out of Western Ontario that is very well correlated with people's pain of osteoarthritis. So that's what their main measure was, to see, did taking turmeric help people with their arthritis? And they used this scale. And they found basically that the combination of this curcuminoid and boswellic acid was better than just the curcumins. But that's one study, so I don't think it would hurt anyone to start either using turmeric in their diet, adding it to their foods, or again, if you decide you'd rather take a supplement, I don't push supplements, but if you did, then to make sure that it's USP or NSF certified. Before I go, I just want to share with you that I meant to put on my slides, and I didn't again, but I make a paste. I make a paste for my dogs, and then I take some too. It's a very easy paste to make. And so you can look online for like turmeric for dogs. And if you do, I'm gonna quickly tell you the recipe, which is really easy. I don't follow the exact recipe anymore. So you boil some water, and then you pull that off the stove, because if you start putting your powder in there, it's gonna boil, and turmeric is very staining, some of you might know. And so then you put some turmeric in there, and again, I just sort of pour my organic powder in there, and then I put some coconut oil in there, and black pepper. Black pepper is key to the absorption of turmeric, just so you know. So if you take a supplement, make sure it has black pepper in it. If you're making it your own, add black pepper. Mix that up, put it in a jar, keep it in the fridge, give them a little teaspoon every morning, and I take a little teaspoon every morning with a little bit of yogurt. Again, I try to remember that, but I will tell you that, especially when I first used it on our dogs, I noticed a very big difference. And again, as a scientist, I was pretty impressed. Like, I'm not, again, trying to talk something up this is an N of 2 with my 2 German Shepherds. But research has shown that its anti-inflammation response is very good. There's also more research on turmeric with cognitive function that's coming out. So not magical. Anything I'm talking about is not magical, just giving you ideas. All right, so I'm going to oh, yes.
Where do you find phosphatic acid?
You know, that's interesting you asked that. I've seen it before, but I don't see it very much. No, do you? Did you ever? Okay, yeah. It can come as a supplement, honestly, but I've never gotten it before. And I would say just stick with the turmeric. I mean, even though that was one study that showed the 2 of them together were better, they weren't that much better, and it'd be easy. Another thing I'm going to talk to you about right now is magnesium, and it's a mineral I've studied. We've studied it in diabetes, and it seems to help people's blood sugar levels. Magnesium is also important for muscle function, as well as for many other things that I'll just talk to you about. So it's the 4th most abundant mineral in the body, helps with protein synthesis, cellular production and storage, cell growth, RNA, DNA production. So it's a pretty, every time I talk about a mineral to my students, it seems like it's the most important mineral, but it is a quite important mineral, but it's 50% is in our bones, about 50% inside of our bodies and cell organs, and only 1% is in the blood. And yet we use serum markers to see if magnesium status is good, and this is my next slide. So there's many ways to measure magnesium status. I will not belabor this. I get more excited about this than you do. I want you to know that the ionized form of magnesium and the urinary magnesium load are both the best ways to measure magnesium. But when you get your blood work done in the hospital, you'll just see serum magnesium. It's just that it lags behind if you're depleted or have too much. That's the only problem. But it's a more inexpensive way than the other ways listed. It also helps to maintain normal nerve and muscle function, cardiac excitability, vasomotor tone, and normal blood pressure. And it helps your immune system, your bone integrity, and also normal blood glucose concentrations. Here are the RDAs for magnesium. And so you could see that for men and women, probably we're around the bottom, 19 to 30, 400, like 310 to up to 420 per day. And about 60% of people in the United States do not consume the amount of magnesium that they need. A lot of that, honestly, for most minerals and vitamins has to do with the fact that people are eating more processed foods. So the more whole foods we can eat, the better we do. And I know that you're like, oh, yes, Stella, we hear that every day. But if, say, you're a person who doesn't like too many fruits and vegetables, just try a small way to get something in. Whether it's through a smoothie, whether it's through a fresh pressed juice, 1 orange a day, like pick a favorite fruit, maybe eat that every day for a week. Something simple like that, or maybe add some, something to your salad that you haven't before, kiwi instead of a tomato. I'm going to tell you a little fun thing that I keep sharing with all my friends, and they're like, you're such a nerd, but how many of you like pomegranates? How many of you love opening a pomegranate? Wow, you do? You like to peel them? Stop it. Okay. Oh, I know. Well, I am hiring you then to open, because here's what I've done. Frozen pomegranate seeds. I buy them frozen, and they're great because, and I don't know where, I suspect I get them at a little store near me, but they're really good. They won't go bad, because I always would buy, I buy the ones in the fridge for like $45, right? And then they start to ferment. So these don't ferment. They taste so good in my yogurt or whatever. So FYI, a very easy way for you to get something like a great antioxidant fruit into your body. So That's a total tangent, but sharing that with you. And for those of you who really like to open them, good for you. I'm impressed. I am. All right. So low magnesium has been associated with chronic stress and inflammatory stress conditions. And even a marginal magnesium deficiency can lead to things like atherosclerosis, hypertension, diabetes, osteoporosis, and even cancer. So there's links between magnesium and these diseases. And I'll tell you the strong link is with diabetes, a very strong link with diabetes and cardiovascular disease. Some foods include bananas, salmon, artichokes, almonds, pumpkin seeds, lots of foods that likely you guys like, and some foods that are both high in nitric oxide as well as magnesium. So see, you can do like a 2-for-1. And so there was a meta-analysis done in athletes, and again, I try to bring these up to you guys because these are people who evaluate a bunch of studies and bring them all together, and they said, well, can magnesium supplementation improve physical fitness? Does it help? And they measured, look at all these things they measured with respect to physical performance to see if magnesium supplementation helped athletes. I feel like I keep going to the right side of the building, and I don't want you all to feel bad on this side. See, I'm right-handed, I go to the right side. And they also included a lot of participants of different ages. So that was also really good in this meta-analysis. But they didn't find that magnesium supplementation per se helped physical performance. So it's not going to be used as an ergogenic aid. And certainly, by the way, if we're going to supplement, the best thing to do is to ensure that people might be depleted, right? So if we're going to do a supplementation study, in my opinion, person should not, we should want to reinforce what they might not have. So my thought to you is, no need to take more than your body needs, but certainly try to still consume foods that are whole foods because that's going to provide us with many nutrients and antioxidants. But this is a quote that's actually true. Drinking 2 to 3 cups of coffee a day can reduce the risk of a stroke by almost 20%. I thought some of you in here would like that. So, of course, I put cream and sugar in my coffee because that's really why I drink coffee. That's bad. I shouldn't say that, but kind of it is. So don't put a lot of cream and sugar in it. But you should put some milk in it or some type of milk product so that it offsets your calcium loss because you can lose some calcium with the caffeine from coffee. I'm going to share with you quickly a study of ours, and I think I have maybe 5 more minutes because I know we're doing a study where we started this in 2013, where we're collecting data on athletes from 18 years of age and older, recreational on up to professionals. And so basically, here are our criteria for them, and they come in, and we do a lot of things that your SLS team does, where we assess their DEXA, their bone and percent body fat by DEXA, we test their resting metabolic rate, we test their VO2 max, et cetera. And I'm only sharing this with you because, one, a lot of them didn't supplement with magnesium, which was fine. But we were pretty happy to see that their intake of magnesium was all within the recommended dietary allowances. We were pretty surprised with that, with over 300 athletes in the study so far. So this is a cross-sectional study, not an intervention, that, again, we collect data every year on all these athletes. I have 2 more things to talk about. One is periodized nutrition, which I will sum up in this slide. And this is something that I just want to share with you, that periodized nutrition is something kind of hot in nutrition right now in the last several years. Basically what it's saying is, really to me is intuitive eating, right? When you train hard, you need to eat more, in particular, increase the carbohydrate intakes. And when you're training low, when you're maybe off season or days that you have days off, then you want to probably not bring that down a notch and not quite eat as much. And that's very intuitive, right? But sometimes we don't think that way. Or sometimes, obviously, we eat more when we're stressed or eat less when we're stressed. I can't eat a thing when I'm stressed. Like, I try to. My husband says, come on. I eat when I'm happy, I eat when I'm sad. So I'm like, okay, I know, so just be aware of your body. Really listen to your body. A lot of times we don't do that and we kind of let it go. And then something happens worse later that we thought, darn, if I only could have gone back that week and done something a little different with my diet or hydrated more. That's something that we need to think about. So this is actually a friend of mine, Oscar Eukendrup, who's in the UK. He developed this recommendation chart, and his company, again, I know Kickback Sports Science. You can go on there. He's a very good scientist, but just wanted to share that with you about periodized nutrition. and then making sure you refuel, you repair, you rehydrate, and you relax. Relaxing is really also very important, and let's not forget to do that. However you do, whether it's listening to good music, taking a walk with your family and friends, etc. So this is something I'm going to end with because I know a lot of people this intermittent fasting is really popular. Have you heard of it? Okay, so I won't ask how many of you might have tried it or do it, but you know that there's two types of intermittent fasting. It's either a 5-2, meaning that for 5 days you kind of eat what you want, and 2 days you kind of bring it down to 600 calories a day. I would die, I think. Or you do a 16-8. For 8 hours, whatever 8 hours you choose during the day, you're going to eat. In the 16 hours, which typically people do that through part of their nighttime, is that you're not going to eat at all. One of my colleagues is hilarious. She goes, but Stella, I would switch it. I would eat for 16 and just sleep for 8. And I said, that's a good point, right? I like that. So basically, that's what I showed you. How does it work? And so there's advantages, right? What I kind of honestly like about it is that I don't know why we have to call it intermittent fasting. I do have to laugh that everything has to get a name, right? Everything has to be labeled with something. But intermittent fasting really just means that you're controlled. You're controlling your eating some. So for people who might eat late into the night, it might help them to say, okay, I started eating at 11, I've got to stop at 7, is that right? 7, so that just might help them. It doesn't mean that eating after 7 is gonna make you gain weight. Plenty of countries in this world eat dinner at 10 o'clock at night, many of us know that, right? So be aware, though, it just helps you to be aware of that, how much you're eating. And it also means that, it doesn't mean you should eat 45 donuts within that 8 hours, right? It means that you should still try to choose healthy eating. So that's my line about this. And if, just to share with you this study, though, they didn't find a difference between weight loss in people who did intermittent fasting versus those who decreased their caloric intake. And that makes sense, though, right, guys? Because decreasing your calories, you're going to lose some weight. I mean, we know that, however you choose to do it. But it'd be better to do it a healthier way. And again, including things that are healthy for you 80% of the time. I think ice cream should always, chocolate should be there pretty much daily, but we have to watch how much we have. Not a half gallon, not 4 bars of chocolate, but just being aware of what we eat. But enjoying food's really important. So I'm gonna skip over that because it basically says what I said, but what I just stated to you. This just shares with you that sometimes, because people always ask me about exercising in the morning on an empty stomach, this is basically why I put this up here. I know I can't eat before I exercise early, and probably many of you can't. All I would suggest to you is this. You'll do fine, but make sure you hydrate. I try to have a couple of energy chews before I start in the morning just to get me going, and then I eat post-exercise. So just be aware of that it's not gonna help you or hurt you per se. Going into exercise fasted is not really helpful, but it's that early morning that's very tough for many people, and I can certainly relate to that. So I'm wrapping up here, and I think on time, I hope. Excuse me. I really do want to profess to you, excuse me again, general healthy eating. And that's boring, and that's not exciting, but that's really what we should strive to do, right? That food should be celebrated, food should be consumed well, not thought of negatively as much as we can, and to eat and think about what we eat, but not obsess about what we eat. I always like to sort of highlight our Center for Nutrition and Performance. We actually serve our athletes, and we serve professional teams as well as U.S. squash and USA field hockey.